When Alec Egret was just a brat who spent most of his time doing useless things like fishing around the capital, a flashy magician named Eldaz approached him and asked if he was interested in magic. At first Alec thought that Eldaz was Diddy's agent, but it turns out that he was really just interested in teaching him magic. Eldaz soon started teaching him how to cast spells by thinking about the friends he would make in the future and how he would need to save their asses from monster attacks. Thanks to his trauma-heavy teaching methods, Alec managed to learn magic quickly. Even then, he was disappointed that it took him a whole day to learn a single spell, and he didn't even listen to Eldaz mumbling that it takes normal people a month to learn that spell. Alec eagerly asked Eldaz to teach him another spell, but he told the overeager boy that one spell was enough for the day. Alec was not satisfied by that, but Eldaz remained firm on his decision, and they decided to waste the rest of their time by fishing. Alec kept pouting like a bitch the entire time, but then Eldaz stoked his ego by telling him that he had great talent for magic. He told Alec that even without his lessons, he would become a great magician in the future, and asked him to leave it to fate. Alec was shocked to hear this, and he asks Eldaz why was he teaching him magic in the first place. Before he could give an answer, a fish got caught in his line and Eldaz panicked because he had never caught a fish before. Alec laughed at him before helping him out, saying that a magician as skilled as him should know how to catch fish. Anyway, their life as a student and teacher continued as time passed, and Eldaz taught Alec a lot about magic. But then one day, Eldaz suddenly announced that he was leaving the capital. Alec was devastated by this news because that meant he would never meet his teacher again. But Eldaz had a final piece of advice for him. He told Alec that if he ever got the chance to become a court magician in the future, he should refuse to take the role. Alec couldn't understand what he meant by that and asked Eldaz why did he even teach him magic in the first place. Eldaz shed his gloomy expression for a moment as he talked about Alec's late mother, who did him a great favor when she was alive, and he was just trying to repay her son by teaching him. That was the last time Alec saw his teacher, and he worked hard to enter the Royal Magic Academy so that he could meet him again. There, Alec finds that Eldaz was once a student of the same academy, and he graduated at the top of his class, becoming a court magician soon after that. However, he was kicked out from that post in a few years, and Alec realizes why Eldaz told him not to become a court magician. Instead of following his advice, Alec decides to become a court magician so that he can the unfair imperial court itself. Long story short, he succeeds in achieving his goal and becomes a court magician, but turns out, he should have listened to his teacher's advice. Alec realizes this only when Crown Prince Regulus fires him from his adventurer party in the middle of a dungeon. He asks the prince the reason for that, and the blonde asshole tells him that he is being fired because he is useless. He talks about how he always risks his life on the front line to beat the monsters. The fire magician Lenny uses her spells to repel monsters, and their tank Ix blocks enemy attacks. On the other hand, Alec stays in the rear all the time, and he can only cast pitiful support magic. Regulus says that they don't need a loser like him in their party, and then further insults Alec, saying that he doesn't even deserve to be called a court magician. Alec tries to explain the reason why he only uses support magic, but Regulus doesn't want to hear his answer. Lenny also agrees with him, calling Alec a coward who doesn't have the guts to go deeper into the dungeon, and he is always holding them back. Ix silently nods in agreement as well, and then Lenny says that they have put up with him all this time because the king ordered him to join their party. However, now that the prince has decided to kick him out, she sees no reason for behaving politely with him. Regulus says that Alec must have gotten the top score at the academy by giving a handy to the professors for extra credit. He then asks him why does he have a dagger on him when commoners are forbidden from carrying weapons. Alec explains that they will need the dagger for the next floor of the dungeon, but Regulus gets furious at him. He takes the dagger away and grabs Alec's collar, telling him that no one on his party disobeys him. The prince then snatches away his court wizard robe, telling him that he doesn't deserve it. Alec is left devastated at this, and he has no choice but to leave the dungeon. However, despite being fired and insulted, he still wants to help Regulus and the party. He puts together some notes that can help Regulus tackle the lower dungeon floors, especially since he lacks magic power. The next day, Alec goes to the palace to meet the king about the same, but the guards stop him, telling him that he has been removed from the post of the court magician. He is just a commoner now, and commoners are not allowed to enter the palace without permission. Alec is shocked to hear this, and just then, Lenny comes there to rub salt on his wounds. She tells him to get lost and then walks back inside the palace, but Alec asks her to listen to him just once. He requests her to take the notes he has compiled to the king because he was the one who assigned him as the court magician and told him to join the prince's party. Lenny takes the notes from him, only to tear them and stomp on them. She then orders the guards to kick the commoner, and Alec is left hopeless and jobless in the middle of the city. He finally realizes that he should have listened to Eldaz and not become a court magician, when suddenly, he hears a familiar voice calling his name. Alec turns around and sees a redhead staring at him, and then she suddenly runs to hug him. He takes a moment to process what is happening, but then finally recognizes the girl as Yorha, an old friend of his from his academy days. They sit down to catch up with each other, and Alec tells Yorha the story of how he was kicked out from the prince's party as well as his position as the court magician. Yorha is furious to hear this, and she curses the kingdom that discriminates between nobles and commoners. Alec somehow manages to calm her down before anyone hears them. And then Yorha says that it is actually a good thing that he got fired. Alec isn't even hurt by her statement after all the bull he has been through in the past 2 days. But then Yorha reminds him that she once promised that she would make him join her party someday. Alec remembers that, and then Yorha reveals that she came to the capital for the same reason. She gets up and stretches her hand towards Alec, asking him to conquer dungeons with her. He is happy to receive the offer, but he has started doubting himself after being fired from his job. However, Yorha doesn't care about any of that. She tells Alec that the only person she wants to join her team is him, and no other magician can take his place. He gets emotional on hearing this and immediately takes up her offer, and Yorha gladly welcomes him to her a rank party lasting period. The next day, Alec leaves the country along with Yorha, and he dreams about Eldaz's advice of not becoming a court magician. A few days later, the news of Alec leaving the country reaches Regulus and his party, and they couldn't care less about him. Regulus talks about how Alec was hailed as a genius among the academy students, and he had high hopes from him. He thinks that they wasted their time because of him, but Lenny says that they don't need to worry about that now because soon a pure-blooded noble will join their party and they will become much more powerful. Meanwhile, Alec and Yorha reach Fizzle, the city of dungeons. Yorha tells him about how this city is the base of a lot of adventurers since it doesn't discriminate between the nobles and commoners. She is eager to get Alec registered as an adventurer quickly, but once they reach the guild, they are in for a shock. The receptionist tells Alec that he can't be registered with Yorha's party because they go beyond floor 30 of the dungeon, and he needs to be a member of the guild for 2 years before he can be allowed to join them. Yorha throws a tantrum on hearing this and asks the receptionist to make an exception for Alec, but she refuses. Yorha asks if her friend Kraja didn't approach her about this matter, and the receptionist affirms that Kraja came here and threatened them to let Alec join. However, the receptionists deal with nutjobs like her every day, so they didn't even budge. Alec and Yorha return empty-handed from the guild and take a break at a public park. As they eat lunch, Yorha tells Alec that they have reached floor 52 of the dungeon, and they can't wait 2 years for him to join their party. However, she is not one to lose hope and decides that if they can't go to dungeons deeper than floor 30, they will go to the shallower dungeons as warm-up. Alec is on board with that idea, and they immediately go to a low-level dungeon with insect monsters. Yorha uses her reinforcement magic to boost Alec's speed and darts around her, taking down the monsters with ease. However, things get serious when Yorha notices that the number of the bugs is not decreasing and they seem to be getting stronger. Alec agrees with her, pointing out that there must be something wrong in the nest that is forcing the monsters to act like this, but it is still under their control. As they keep fighting against the monsters, Yorha activates her shield and begins charging ahead to find their nest. Alec tells her that she is taking a big risk by doing that, but she tells him that this much is nothing. She says that he seems to have lost his edge, because if was the Alec of the past, monsters of this level would be nothing for him. She asks him to trust her and become his real self once again. Alec realizes that Yorha is speaking the truth, and he just needs to regain his confidence to get them out of this situation. He remembers Eldaz's lesson about how he will need to save his friends from danger, and using that as motivation, he decides to get on the offensive. Alec quickly takes down some monsters with fireballs and then defeats the rest with his dagger. However, a huge swarm of monsters surrounds them after that, but Yorha is not worried about them any longer. She casts a barrier around them, giving Alec the prep time to cast a powerful wide area spell that instantly disintegrates all the bugs. Once everything seems calmed down, Yorha pats him on the back, telling him that he has still got it. Just then, the ground beneath them starts rattling and a gigantic earthworm comes out of it. It attacks Yorha, almost swallowing her. Alec tells her that he will save her and she just needs to activate her shield. Yorha fully trusts him, and she activates her shield spell as Alec summons a fire serpent and attacks the earthworm with it, turning it to ash. Yorha is completely unharmed by the fire, and as she descends to the ground, she runs towards Alec. She says that he is still the strongest attack mage she knows, and their fight reminded her of their academy days. Back then, they were struggling against a 5-headed dragon that was too tough for their weapons, and its attacks were too relentless. However, Alec obliterated the monster with just one spell after enough prep time. Thanks to that, they were able to clear the 68th floor of the dungeon and created a new academy record. And now, Alec is going to join the same party of friends again. Back when they destroyed the level 68 boss and returned back to the Magical Academy, they were hailed as the best batch of students the Academy has seen in a long while. And even their midget of an instructor named Rosie knew that there was something different with these 4 students, as they seemed to blend in with each other and work together with unmatched synergy. They all returned from the dungeons with bruises and cuts, but with wide smiles on their faces as they just beat the all-time record of reaching and crossing the level 68 dungeon. And not only did they beat the record, they utterly smashed it, since the last strongest party was only able to reach till the 32nd floor. Finally, the day of graduation came when Rosie the midget released their scores, with Rain being 4th in class, followed by Kraja, who was 3rd, then Yorha, who was the runner-up, and finally Alec, who was the best scoring student by far in recent history, and the class valedictorian. They were all happy and full of hope back then, as they made fun of their instructor and got beaten up for it as well. While they were leaving the academy together, the remaining students were all jealously watching what they thought was the conception of one of the best parties that they would ever see. A party which is definitely going to gain a legendary status. Not knowing that Alec would soon decide that he doesn't want to pursue his career as an adventurer, and instead wants to become a court magician. His party members are stunned by this news, but they do realize that the job of a court magician is comparatively easier with much better and stable pay. Even though they were disheartened by this, they never blamed Alec for that and wished him good luck in the future, while Yorha promised that someday they would again be in a team together. In the present, that promise seems to be fulfilled as Yorha and Alec celebrate in a bar, where after only taking a single glass of booze, Yorha is completely blackout drunk. She starts getting angry about the fact that they are not allowed to go in the deeper dungeons yet, but soon ends up sleeping right there on the bench. Alec smiles at her, remembering how she was basically the same even during their academy years. Like a true simp, he puts his jacket on her so that she can sleep a little warmer. But one of the people inside the bar doesn't seem to like simps, since he is on a Sigma grind. He walks up to Alec, making fun of him for being a beta male. But Alec completely ignores him, since the man is a fan of Andrew Tater Tot. He obviously has anger issues, so he raises his bottle to smash it on Alec's head. But Alec uses a mana shield effortlessly to block the attack, before turning to face him. The man smiles at him, happy at the fact that he finally got some attention. He already knew that Alec was a court magician and claims that he wouldn't expect someone as elite as him would be roaming around trying to become an adventurer. This sudden change in his mood surprises, but what surprises him more is the fact that the big burly man takes out a card from his pocket, which turns out to be an adventurer's pass, and puts it down on the table in front of him. Alec is confused and asks what the hell is he doing, but the man simply replies that it's a token of apology for testing him with the bottle. But he also puts another condition that Alec must show him his magic if he wants to take the pass. Alec is still confused, when suddenly Yorha, the idiot, wakes up groggy and calls the man the guildmaster, asking what is he doing here. Alec is at a loss of word, wondering why would the guildmaster just give him a pass. But the man seems to be chill like that and hands it over before taking them to the training ground. He claims that this is the underground training area where he tests the parties who want to level up, and this is where Alec will show him his strength. Yorha claims that this might not be the best time since Alec has been drinking for a while, but Alec claims that he still has enough mana left to fight. The guildmaster formally introduces himself to Alec as Levi, and that immediately rings a bell in Alec's head, as he realizes that the guildmaster is a very powerful mage who used to lead an S-ranked party a while back. The guildmaster laughs, claiming that those are blurry memories now, and clarifies the requirements, which is very simple. Alec has to impress Levi with his magical skills, and that's all. With that, they both get ready for the sparring session, and Alec takes the first step as he uses his offensive Thunderbolt magic. which is expertly dodged by Levy, who in turns uses water magic and throws water balloons, I guess. Alec dodges them and realizes that the Guildmaster has the upper hand in terms of range, so he will have to try some other strategy. He decides to turn the fight into a close quarters combat, but to his surprise, instead of backing off, Levy slams the ground with his fists and uses reinforcement magic on himself, boosting his speed a lot. He then dashes towards Alec, sidestepping him at the very last moment, and starts revolving around him at an incredible speed, before trying to land a solid punch, which Alec barely blocks with his mana shield. The shield, however, ends up shattering due to the sheer force of the blow, and he gets blasted into the walls. Levy is impressed by his durability though, claiming that not many people could survive that punch, but Alec walks out of the cloud of dust, claiming that Levy is indeed a true S-ranked adventurer. Seeing his nonchalant nature confuses Levy a little, who expected him to be scared and worried. But Alec claims that he is continuously forgetting that he is no longer the court magician, who are bound by a bunch of rules and are only able to use defensive magic. Since he is now not bound by anything, he can truly let go and use his full arsenal of magic attacks. Levy laughs at this and tells him to come at him full force, and Alec takes out his stiff wood once again, but this time he turns it into a magical blade. Levy gets ready for his attacks and again throws water balloons at him, but this time Alec manages to dodge the first one. Before slashing the next, he pretends to go on the offensive, which forces Levy to do the same, but this was all a plan, as when Levy uses his self-boosting magic and dashes towards Alec, he lays down a trap and explodes him with a thunderbolt before slashing through him to the other side. Levy stands still for a couple of moments, claiming that Alec truly is something else, as he already overpowered his magic. But to Alec's surprise, Levy isn't done yet and activates his trump card. He brings out magical gauntlets covered with dragon scales, which gives him an immense boost in strength, and with all that power, he rushes straight at Alec, who barely dodges the hit. The punches create a crater on the ground, but Alec is not ready to back off, as he then uses his lightning spell on him, but Levy simply shakes it off, completely ignoring the hit. Levy pushes through the attack and tries to punch Alec, who blocks the hit with his shield, but gets pushed back. He wonders what he could do next to deal with this monster, but Levy has more tricks in his bag, as he uses a special ability of his gauntlets, which heals him of any injuries. Levy realizes that the more he drags out the fight, the worse his chances of winning are. So he decides to push the attack and starts slashing and hacking at Levy, who manages to block every single strike, taunting Alec to do better than that. Alec decides to trash talk as well, which tilts the Guildmaster, who tries to land a powerful punch, but Alec dodges that and finds an opening to attack. This annoys the Guildmaster even more, so he pushes on with the attack, hitting the wall instead as Alec nimbly dodges beneath it. Levy doesn't give him any breathing space though and tries to land another attack, but Alec blocks successfully, before trying to land the winning blow. To his surprise though, the Guildmaster is a lot tougher than he looks and soaks the damage, before trying to land a double-handed smash, which covers the air with a dust cloud. But as the dust clears, Alec emerges out of it unhurt and tries to go after Levy once again, but this time when he strikes the Guildmaster, his stiff wood turns limp, and he falls to the ground unconscious after completely running out of mana. Yorha immediately rushes towards him, using her regeneration magic to heal. Suddenly Rain appears inside the training ground, making fun of Levy for being an S-ranked adventurer and using his strongest skill on a lower rank person. Levy tells him to shut his trap, as he was merely testing Alec's limits and he would have passed him anyways. With that, Rain picks Alec up and takes him into a room where he can get some rest, while Rain sits on his legs for some odd reason. They talk about how it's been so long since they have been together like this, when the receptionist bursts into the room, claiming that she urgently needs the Guildmaster. Levy grabs her face and drags her out of the room with him, while Rain grabs a bunch of booze and asks Yorha to tell him everything that happened with Alec. By the time she was finished, Rain was shaking with anger as he realizes that the people in his party made him carry all their stuff, had them do their inventory, never let him use any magic apart from defensive one, and didn't even let him carry a dagger with him. He suddenly turns towards Yorha and asks how exactly did Alec even use defensive magic, since that was his job at the academy, and Alec was never any good at it. Yorha replies that he learnt it from scratch and worked at it till he became good enough, and now his defensive magic is almost as good as hers. He realizes that even after babysitting the crown prince for all that time, They still banished him by calling him worthless. He ends up shattering the bottle in his hands in anger, which wakes Alec up. He is a little surprised to see Rain here, while Yorha happily exclaims that the guildmaster gave him the pass. This makes Alec really happy, as now they can all move towards the higher level dungeons as a party. But Rain tells them that it can wait as before, that they need to do something else. Alec has no idea what the hell is he talking about, but Rain explains that first they need to take revenge. For that they will enter the royal city and sneak into the palace, and then beat the out of the prince and his party. Alec tells him that they are not going to do anything like that. And even Yorha claims that fighting other parties is strictly prohibited. Alec puts a hand on Rain's shoulder, telling him that having loads of fun on their adventure would be enough for him, as he doesn't really care or think about what happened to him at the court anymore. Rain suddenly claims that he has got it. All they have to do is become the strongest party in the world. That would 100% piss the crap out of the prince. And if their country is ever in any problem, they are bound to come for aid to the strongest party in the world, and it would feel really amazing to say no to their faces. Alec realizes that this is the best compromise that he could get, so he agrees on becoming the strongest party in the world. Meanwhile, in another room, an injured S-ranked adventurer named Krista is badly injured, as she breathes hard while the receptionist applies bandages to her body. The guildmaster doesn't look amused by this, since if the S-ranked party is in trouble, that means that the whole guild is in trouble. Krista tells Levy that her party is still stranded and they need all the help that they could get. The guildmaster immediately convenes an emergency meeting where he calls all the ranked adventurers and explains that they are going on a rescue mission on the 64th floor. Back in Alec's room, he ends up meeting Kreja after a long time, whose two personalities seems to have developed very nicely. She asks why he is not at the meeting, but Alec replies that he is not an ranked adventurer, so he stayed back. She immediately casts her heal spell, which completely heals Alec in an instant, which makes me wonder why the hell were they using bandages on Krista if they can simply cast heal magic. Anyways, Yorha and Rain enter the room as Rain starts screaming with excitement that they are going to go on a rescue mission. They catch Alec up on the happenings, claiming that the dungeon is a little different because on that floor, you can't use magic, so you are completely dependent on potions. And since the S-ranked party got completely wiped out, they ended up sending Krista alone to get help. Alec asks Kreja whether she was fine working in that dungeon since her speciality is healing magic, and he replies hotly that she opposed it. But the idiot Rain overruled her and used his veto to enter the dungeon. They start bickering with each other, when Yorha turns towards Alec, claiming that it should be up to him whether they go into the dungeon or not, since he is going to have the main and the hardest job dealing with the main floor boss. Alec agrees to the mission, and soon they head out towards the dungeon. And standing in front of the entrance, Rain claims that this is going to be the start of the legend of their party. They quickly reach the entrance of the dungeon, which has an affinity which doesn't let anyone use healing magic, forcing them to rely on potions and on dodging the attacks as much as possible. The target level where Krista's guild members are stuck is near level 64 boss, but before they could reach that they would have to clear all the other levels, including defeating their bosses as well. Rain realizes that if they go level by level they would be too late, but Yorha pulls out a magic crystal, claiming that Krista gave it to them, and with this, they could skip all the other levels and straight up teleport to level 64. Alec realizes that it must be a super important and rare magical item, but Krista is more focused on saving her teammates before anything else, so she even gave the other party these crystals to directly reach the target level. Yorha tells them that the level 64 boss is apparently an undead, which means that Kraja will basically be useless, and since Ha herself is a support mage, that means that the majority of the battle would depend on Alec alone. Rain tells him to save his mana as much as possible and let him deal with the small fry because he doesn't want Alec to run out of mana in front of the undead boss. Kreja agrees, warning them that from here on out, they would be literally fighting against death itself and should take it seriously since even an S-ranked party got wiped out here. Instead of being discouraged though, Rain feels more alive than ever and hypes them up, claiming that the story of their legendary party starts now. With that, Yorha tosses the magic crystal in the air and they immediately teleport inside the dungeon at level 64. They find themselves in a dingy cave, and immediately a bunch of undead skeletons rise up from the dead carrying shields and swords. Rain is not scared in the least though, and takes out his spear before lunging in for an attack. He starts attacking the skeletons in front of him, easily defeating them several at a time, while claiming that till now level 64 seems very easy. The others are still quietly watching though as a bunch of skeletons emerge out of nowhere and start walking towards them. Rain fearlessly jumps towards them, slashing and hacking anyone who comes near him, but Yorha starts worrying since Rain went out of range from her support magic. She runs behind him, calling him back, while Alec and Ja follow. Kreja claims that Rain should be fine since he has a very powerful ancient artifact, the piercing black spear which is very difficult to damage and stays razor sharp at all time. A perfect weapon for a brainless idiot. Alec calls Rain out, asking whether he needs any help, but he tells them that this is child's play for him and keeps destroying any and all enemies that come near him. Alec smiles and starts walking alongside when suddenly he feels a weird presence behind him and instinctually shoots out a lightning bolt towards it. When the dust clears, he doesn't spot anyone there and even is confused as to what he is doing. He tells her that he thought someone was behind her, but it might have been a false alarm, when suddenly he decides to check something out and draws out his sword before blinding charging forward and slashing the air. Immediately his strike is blocked by an invisible entity, who then reveals itself to be the Grim Reaper. Rain smiles at him, claiming that Alec doesn't seem to be as washed up as he thought, telling Alec that he already knew that an invisible enemy was nearby, but he is no good at dealing with them. The Grim Reaper pushes Alec back and tries to attack, but he deflects the hit before jumping back towards Rain. Alec realized that Rain was confident in his abilities and trusted him as a friend and comrade to defend him behind his back. He realizes that he hasn't felt this kind of connection in years, which fuels him full of energy as he jumps up in the air with his magic sword and slashes through the Grim Reaper, killing it immediately. He turns back towards Yorha, asking whether she knew about it too, and she immediately apologizes for not telling him, while Krasha tells him to take it up with Rain since he is the one who suggested it in the first place. Alec smiles at Rain and promises to return the favor one day, while Rain replies that they would have to get out of this dungeon alive first. The four friends now huddle together, ready to take down all the enemies, and soon both Alec and Rain jump towards the undead skeletons, slashing and hacking them left and right, while Yorha reinforces them with magic. Rain is feeling himself as he uses fancy moves and kills all the skeletons that come in front of him, while Krasha uses her pinpoint accuracy with the bow to deal with the skeletons that try to sneak up on Rain. Now herself is forced to defend herself with her magic staff as they decide that the waves of skeletons is basically never ending, so Alec calls them back towards him, claiming that he will wipe them all out in one go. His teammates immediately huddle up behind him, while he casts a strong thunderbolt skill, which blasts the entire area with lightning, turning all the skeletons into charred crisps. Once they were safe, Rain turns around and asks Alec why he is only using his thunderbolt skill since he used to use several other offensive magic types when he was at the academy. Alec quickly comes out with an excuse and tells him that thunderbolt is the quickest spell to cast. That's why he is doing that. But Rain knows that he is hiding something, but decides not to push it further since they are on a time crunch. They suddenly hear a monstrous roar coming from the front, and they assume that it must be the boss room. Rain immediately gets ready, and after Yorha's reinforcement magic, he runs faster than Usain bolts towards the sound. Alec is impressed both by Rain and by Yorha's magic, while he and the other two girls follow Rain towards the end of the tunnel. Once outside in the opening, they find Rain sitting atop a ledge watching a giant monster chasing a bowl-cut adventurer all around the place. Alec immediately wants to save the guy, but Rain doesn't seem too interested, claiming that the mage running around is named Loki, who is the biggest jerk of a party called Rekroma. Krasha nods, claiming that Loki is a really crafty support magician. Alec, however, can't believe all this while Loki runs pathetically, screaming at Rain to help him, promising to haunt him every single day if he dies here. Rain, however, doesn't seem to care about his curses and watches with disinterest. But when Loki trips to the floor and it seems that the monster will get him, Alec immediately gets ready to jump into action. Krasha, however, tells him to wait and watch, since this is Loki's signature style. Alec watches as the monster walks towards Loki when suddenly a trap spell gets activated beneath it, blasting it with lava. Alec is shocked to see it, while Krasha tells him that Loki is a really crafty magician. The monster stumbles and ends up activating another trap spell, getting hit by several more fire blasts. Loki turns around and starts laughing at the monster, claiming that only an idiot would trip in a situation like this. But his smile soon turns upside down when the enraged monster decides to end it all with a powerful magical blast. Loki realizes that he is going to die right here, and would have been killed, but Rain ends up saving him at the very last second. Loki can't believe that he is still alive, while Alec and the girls descend down to face the enemy. The monster tries to attack Alec, but Yorha saves him with her magic shield. Alec tries to use his thunder spell, but to his surprise, the monster immediately turns around and starts charging towards Rain and Loki. Alec shouts and warns them of the oncoming danger and uses another thunderbolt spell which hits the monster directly, but as the dust clears, he realizes that his spell wasn't strong enough to stop it. Rain realizes that the monster is going to catch up to him, so he uses a last resort tactic and turns towards the monster, running in between its legs to juke it. He then throws Loki towards Krasia, who falls to the ground alongside the crafty support mage, while Yorha tells Krasia to take Loki to the ledge while they deal with the monster. Rain immediately gets in position and takes out his spear, ready for the attack. They wait till Krasia gets Loki to safety and then get ready for the final showdown. Yorha uses her magic to boost all the stats for Rain, who rushes towards the monster, dodging its attack and jumping up in the air before delivering a spear thrust to its face. The monster turns out to be much tougher than he imagined, though, as it shakes Rain roughly and manages to throw him off to the ground. Yorha rushes towards an injured Rain, but the monster immediately tries to crush him. Thankfully, Yorha manages to cast her shield magic, blocking the attack, giving Rain time to recover. Alec, on the other hand, seems to be pretending as if he is in an orchestra and creates 5 magic circles around the monster. Loki comments that creating 3 magic circles is difficult enough, and for him to be able to create 5 at once, he must be a genius. Krasia replies that he can do much more than that, and to Loki's surprise, Alec manages to create 20 magical circles all at once. The monster tries to rush at them, but Rain jumps up its body and stabs it in the tail, giving Alec the time he needed to finish his spell. He jumps off the monster as Alec finally finishes his preparations and blasts the beast with a combination of thunderbolt magic, which shocks it in place. But when Alec tries to finish it off, surprisingly, the monster manages to sidestep and avoid the next attack. The monster immediately starts charging its own magic blast, but Krasia uses a spell to blind it momentarily, while Yorha casts a magic spell which creates huge links, trapping the monster in place. Rain uses this to his advantage, using his spear as a javelin, managing to spear the monster through its head, while Alec gets ready to finish it off. To their surprise, the monster is still able to move and decides to cast his powerful magical blast once again, but Alec stands there unafraid, as he readies the magic spell that only 2 people in the entire world know. One is his teacher Eldas, who created it, and the other one is himself, who learnt it from Eldas. The moment the monster shoots its magic blast towards Alec, he uses reflection magic, returning the favor with double the intensity. The monster is really tough though, as he manages to survive this as well, barely clinging to life. The monster decides to use the spell once again, but this time Alec uses his reflection magic alongside creating multiple magic circles, enveloping the beast in a monstrous inferno, turning it into crypts, while Rain finishes the job by slashing the monster's head in half. With that, they celebrate their victory, but interrupts their celebrations, thanking Alec for the help, telling him that he knows about him as he is the court magician. Alec responds that he left that job, and Loki replies that it's a loss for the prince and his party. He then drops the bomb on them by claiming that the monster they fought was not the actual floor boss, but one of the sub-bosses who was stupid enough to chase him and got itself isolated. This really shocks Alec and the party, who wonder how strong the actual boss will be if the sub-boss gave them so much trouble. Loki reveals that the sub-boss is actually a necromancer, dressed as a knight in black armor. He claims that physical attacks don't seem to be all that effective and are only good enough to buy some time. He then turns towards Alec and presents a magic wand with a cross at its head. Alec seems to recognize it, while Loki reveals that it's an ancient artifact, and the wand immediately turns into a sword in Alec's hands. Rain is not convinced, however, asking why would Loki give away such valuable item, but Loki simply laughs, claiming that he intends to use Alec as bait in the vanguard. They are all shocked and confused by it, but Loki explains that Alec looks like a weak mage, and if they put him in the vanguard, he would look like an easy target, drawing the boss towards himself. They can then set up an ambush, defeating the boss and bathe in the glory of defeating an S-ranked monster. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.